In late October of 2023, Rusty Key was generous enough to invite both Sam and myself to Game Preserve Woodlands for a fine evening of filming. There, we were formally introduced to Jim Austin, a hardware technician who works at the Game Preserve, mostly maintaining their pinball games, and is also the majority owner of Adaptive Game Products. During this meeting, we were given the rundown of the adaptive flipper controller that Jim developed. Jim has bravely soldiered on from a debilitating stroke that left his right arm paralyzed. After our private seminar, we met up with our friend and voiceover contact, Jay Live, and got a hands-on demonstration of this exciting new product on several of their pinball machines. Here's the interview and some highlights from our journey.
Hey, I'm Sam from SoftwareAgentsHQ. I'm here at Game Preserve Woodlands talking with two men from the Game Preserve, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jim Austin, President of Adaptive Game Products.
And I'm Rusty Key, COO of Game Preserve Affiliates.
And today we're going to talk about this new device that you've invented. Could you tell us a bit about it?
You want me?
No, you go right ahead, man.
Okay.
This is the man.
Okay, well, a couple of years ago I had a stroke. And so I'm a repair tech, and I repaired pinball machines and arcade games. And so after I got them fixed, I had to have some way of testing them. And so with one hand available, you can't play pinball. So I was sitting around one day and I came up with a device, and it's basically a jack that you put into the machine, installed in the machine, and it's called Adaptive Flipper Control, and a controller that allows you to then plug into the jack with an audio jack, and then I can play the game with one hand.
So what happened was, as Jim came through and was talking to me and said, hey, you know, when he came back to work, he was like, he was the brains and the eyes, and I had junior techs that they were learning from and help and do the actual work. But he wanted to be able to test the game. And they were working on a game called Gorgar, which incidentally is the very first speaking pinball machine. And we had it back in back, he was working on it, but he realized, as he said, he couldn't test it. So he decided, hey, can I make one of these things to allow us to? And before it was out the jacks, it was just wired in. And once he said that, he said, I think I can do this. He said, I think I've got an idea. And I said, well, you know what? Flush it out. Show us how we could make this move from machine to machine. And then we'll go from there and see what we got. And about a week later, I guess, around the middle of February, he came up and said, hey, come back. I think I got something that works. And he had the jack and he had the two devices put together, and we've taken off from there.
Mm-hmm. And what made you think that you could even do that? What was the main inspiration?
Well, like I said, I created it as a tool for me, so I could test the pinballs after I got them repaired. And so Rusty came up with the idea of like, let's get it out there to other people that might be able to take advantage of it that are not included in the pinball world right now. So. And I thought you could do it because I know how the flipper controls work, and I thought we could just tap into those and create a box that would have a right button and a left button for flipper control. And so I tested it out first, like you said, with just wire connecting it, and that worked. So then I decided to make it simple, to make it portable. And I came up with using a headphone jack to plug it into, so you could put it in a bunch of machines and just plug it into whatever one you want to play. Mm-hmm. And it works, at least our testing, it works on every game that we've tested on, all the way from early games in 1960 up to modern games like Godzilla.
Mm-hmm. Earlier when we were speaking, you said that there was some significance of using that kind of end rather than something like an Ethernet cable.
Well, what I did is I wanted it to be easy for someone who might have manual dexterity problems. So like I could have used like an RJ45, but you got to position that just right and get it lined up to get it to stick in and make a connection. This, they just got to take it and stick it right in the hole. So you don't have a bunch of manipulation of the connector. So I think it makes it more simple for someone who has loss of fine motor function or something like that.
And then how did you say you got it into the machines if you're going to use that stereo, and how would you get it into a pinball machine?
Well, you install the jack into the machine, any machine, like you can install it in 10 machines. And this jack works on this jack here. So you could plug it into one machine and play a while and pull it out and go to another machine and plug the same one in and play some more. So the controller is transportable from machine to machine that's equipped with the jack.
And you just put it inside the machine?
Yes, you drill a hole in the bottom of the machine. We did that because we didn't want to mess up the machine, so it's kind of hidden. And we have a label that points down to the left corner. We always put it in the left corner. So this arrow right here points to that left corner, and that tells you where the jack is. And then you just feel under there and you can find the hole and stick it right in.
Okay.
I mean, it's just a standard stereo phone jack, right? So everybody knows what it is. But what's cool about it, as Jim was saying, is that we had a lot of different options. We could have gone to USB. We could have gone with the RJ45, which is like a network cable. We could have gone with several different, even Bluetooth, right? There's people out there doing it with Bluetooth and things. But there were several parameters, and we said, okay, look, if we really want to help the physically challenged community, what do we need to do? What are those parameters around? One of them, as he said, it's got to be in a method of connectivity in and out for those who have motor issues, those who may not be able to reach everything and manage fine-tuned of their muscles. Well, this thing it's pointed on the end, so it's going to find the right hole, right? It'll find it in there. It's robust enough that it's not going to break off. I don't know how many network cables you ever put together, but the little clippy thing always breaks off on the network cable. And if you did that, then it'll just pull out in the middle of the game, right?
Yeah.
The USB, we thought about USB, but again, USB, you got to fit it just the right way and try to. It's hard enough for me to plug one in, much less, someone with motor issues, right? And we have to think about everybody that uses this has probably got some level of motor difficulty, either, but there's also some, and we'll talk a little bit about later, who just may have a height issue, right, to be able to do that. So, like I said, when we first started putting this together and said, hey, let's put it out to the community, we set up about 10 or 15 parameters for ourselves and for the development that says it's got to be easy to use, it's got to be this, it's got to make this happen, you got to be able to put it in all the machines, and any game that has a flipper and they started out in the 1940s, right, from the 40s all the way through 2023, it works in every game. And that was the challenge as well, because there are different voltage requirements and different things. So all that was being considered on how we actually come up with those pieces. So there was a lot to consider.
Yeah, and it even works with some games on a certain era had optical flippers. It even works with the optical ones.
Yeah. The switches were opto. There were opto switches. There's
It's
little,
a
when you
regular
push the
metal
button in,
switch.
there's a receiver here, and the opto goes in there and just blocks it. So they decided, for some reason, on very few games, they decided they should use opto switches. When Jim figured out where we could tie those in and make it work on those as well.
So it works on those
On just about every
as
game.
well.
Yep. We haven't found a game yet we couldn't make it work.
I couldn't make it work on
Yeah, that's really cool to have that universal aspect, because the best thing I can relate to it is arcade sticks, because I definitely like
Right.
fighting
Uh-huh.
games.
Right.
And that's a key thing, is that people go to the events and their controller doesn't work with this console.
Yep.
And people
Yep.
start buying these adapters, and they bring them to the events. And
Right,
it's
we
usually a
wanted to
major
eliminate,
issue.
we wanted to eliminate that as much as we could.
Yeah.
So we would like to see this become the standard. It's cheap, they're readily available anywhere, and they're used across the audio industry ubiquitously. So they're very common. And we also put a 6-foot cable on the controller, so people could stand up, sit down, move away from the machine or up to it, so they had, the ability to move around to wherever they were comfortable. playing.
And then you did talk to me earlier about how you would grip it, and you said there were different
Yeah,
ways. Or
what we did is we have two generic controllers. This is the adult controller, and the buttons are offset on it. So if you look at it, they're offset to one side. So what that allows you to do is if you have a hand size like mine, you can grab a hold of it and the buttons are right there. If you have long fingers, you can turn it around like this and they're farther away. So if you have a bigger hand, it'll accommodate that. Some people like to play this with their thumb. They rock it like this. So some people can do that. Little kids, they think this is a video game controller, and they put a thumb on each button and play it like a video game.
Yeah.
So you see a variety of ways that people will pick this up and use it. Now, I said these were generic. So some people might have a deformity or whatever that prohibits them from using this. So we can 3D print a custom one for them with buttons on it. So it can be retrofitted to a particular person as their use of it. So that allows us to be more inclusive, get more people, regardless of what the problem is.
And also, you said there were different sizes, right?
Yeah, we have one about half this size for kids and ladies that small hand ladies.
You have to understand there's a couple of different people or a couple of different environments in which we are trying to target here, right? Our biggest desire is to get folks that have never played pinball before come in and do that, to actually play pinball, or people that, matter of fact, we've had several people come in lately, some kids and some other adults, either their arm was useless or for whatever reason, or they was missing an arm. One gentleman had a lawnmower accident, was missing an arm. And it was for the first time him and his son had ever got to play pinball together. And he was doing that here, which was great because he remembered playing pinball. But so there's, like I said, there's a couple of environments. There are some environments where people have the pinball machines at their home and they want to be able to do that. So they could buy one or two kits, get a controller for themselves, and that's it. But what we're really shooting for is arcades like ours, where these kits, each one of the kits for the machine kits, $15 plus shipping taxes, but $15 base price, takes you less than 10 minutes to install it, and there's no soldering. So there's really no reason, cost reason or installation difficulties, things like that arcades shouldn't do it. For example, in my arcade here, we have 30 pinball machines. As of right now, just because of time, we have 28 of them that have these kits already installed. So one of the things we've seen is that there have been multiple attempts at this, but they're very complex and they're kind of game specific, right? So what we've seen is, well, it works on this game or that game, or they're hardwired to it. They may have a plug. The problem, so you can imagine somebody comes into an arcade and say, hey, we're glad the physically challenged are here. We have 40 pinball machines. You can play that one or that one, and that's it. I didn't want that. We didn't want that. What we want to be able to say, hey, welcome here. Here's the controller. Take this. Play any game, any pinball machine you want to. Just walk up, plug it in, and away you go, and you can play it. So that's the desire, to make it to where it's not just allowing people to play the game, a particular pinball game, but it's including them in the whole environment, the whole tournaments. They can now, with these, because when you plug it in, it doesn't disable the flippers on the machine, the buttons on the machine. They can still play in tournaments that they've never been able to do before. So they're including them not only in being able to play pinball, but in the whole environment of tournaments and people playing against each other and that type of thing. And that's really what we're shooting for, is getting that folks that have had those challenges being a little more inclusive for it.
Okay, and then that would raise the question of, how do they take turns? Would the person have to unplug it?
Nope,
Or?
it doesn't affect the thing. So once you're plugged in, you can do. Now, if he had the controller in hand and I'm playing, with the buttons, he could actually
I could go.
he could go to town on it too, right? But you can just set the controller to the side, let it play, and then he plays, then he picks back up and plays it. But yeah, it doesn't change the effect of the button, so you don't have to plug or unplug or anything. It just stays plugged in the whole time.
Oh, okay, so we just keep it
Plugged in, keep it in. Yeah, just don't touch it. Yeah, and you'll be all right.
Because
Yeah.
you can fire the flippers on a guy that's doing
Playing
it
with the
regular.
buttons, right?
Yeah, as long as you don't play
You
dirty.
can, you can ghost him.
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
wanted
exactly.
to. But anyway, we wanted it to be like that, so there's no interruption of gameplay. You just keep right on playing.
Yeah, and that was one of those parameters that we talked about earlier. You have to be able to play in tournaments. You have to not disable the other pieces while it's plugged in, so they could switch back and forth. So, like I said, it's pretty well thought out.
Yeah, very good to iron out the logistics, because it would be very frustrating if you had to take the controllers in and out.
Oh, yeah.
So what we did too, which helped some of this, is that in February, Jim tried it out on the Gorgar machine. And in March, there's the Texas Pinball Festival that happens, and there's 300-400 pinball machines. Well, we always go to the Texas Pinball Festival just because it's a great show. And this year, we brought these flippers, and we brought the machines, and we went up there. During that show, we had various people tell us, hey, this works for me or this doesn't work for me. So we tweaked our design a bit, to where when we came back, we going, okay, after listening to what we found out there, because that was our first prototypes, this is what we need to do. And we started making some of those changes. And at that point is when we put all the design down into the provisional patent that we have applied for and received.
And then on the core gameplay, I guess one thing I wanted to ask is you have each flipper, but how do you launch the ball?
Well, so that was one of the things we thought about early on, was that how can you launch the ball, right? Well, unfortunately, really old games, they don't have the electric launcher, right? So there's no way you can make anything unless you install devices in that particular machine to do that. So somebody will have to reach down there, or hopefully the person can do it, but if they can't, somebody will have to launch the ball. Kind of our logic is that if you've come in and you're having to use a controller and you don't have the dexterity to pull that plunger, you're here with someone, because someone has to help you drive and get here and do all that, right? So they do have to plunge the ball for you. However, some games, Stern games that we have, our Ghostbusters machine, it actually has, it auto launches the ball. It's got a device in there to launch the ball. There's an option in the menu that you can hold the two buttons. If there's a ball in the launch shooter lane, if you push the two flipper buttons together, it'll launch the ball for you. So you can actually launch the ball using the flipper buttons. So those machines that have that capability, we obviously enable those for you to do that. And more people, we've talked to several people at Chicago show, the industry show, they are coming up with the more inclusive, adaptive products for the disabled and the physically challenged.
So you just have to set that setting up.
You
for
set
your
that
machine.
setting up, and
Right.
away you go, away it works.
Yeah, that newer feature really lines up with what you were going for. So
Exactly,
that's-
exactly.
that's really
And
nice.
there's a new game company here in Houston called Barrels of Fun. They created their very first game called Labyrinth. It's an amazing game. And the folks there are good friends of ours, and the gentleman that runs it, David Van Ness, I spoke to him today, asking him, I know it's kind of late down the development cycle, but is there a possibility we will get the double button flipper to launch? And he's going to see what he can do that. But Stern, Jersey Jack, some of the others, they already have all those capabilities already built in. So we just need to turn those features on.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
It is. It really is. It takes away that one other step, right, for us that we needed to develop. And the more things you try to do with two buttons, the more difficult it becomes, right? And if you try to add more buttons, well, the big standard jack doesn't work. And we go, yeah, you can use an RJ45, but all that stuff comes back to the durability. This is very robust. You're not going to break that, right?
Yeah.
But the other ones and other wires, you'll pull that out, it'll break. And we've been running an arcade now for 11 years. And arcade machines, pinball machines, they are made to be very robust because people are tough. very, very tough on the machines that they play. So that's one of the reasons that we're really happy with the way Stern and some of the other ones are doing it.
Yeah, the games have that tilt feature for a reason.
Yeah,
Because-
exactly, because people bang the heck out of them, right? And that's another thing people ask, well, what about, I want to nudge the machine. Well, sorry, you can't nudge the machine because you do this. Now, one of the things we do ask is that if someone is playing in a tournament and they're having to use the flipper, then we have to declare that game while they're playing a no-nudge game. So that way the other people wouldn't nudge it, because it's really not fair. He can't nudge the game, why should you be able to nudge the game? And it does add a different little aspect, because there's a lot of guys that, they live on that nudge, and some of the guys we have to tell them don't nudge so hard. But yeah, those are kind of the rules and things that you need to follow through with, not just making the game available, but making the game inclusive. Right? Because if you have a game where he can't nudge the ball because of his physical disabilities, if everybody else can, it kind of gives them an unfair advantage. And most folks, once you explain that to them, they're okay with it and they'll live with it.
Yeah, it's good to align the logistics with it, with also how you can make it as accessible with people who have any kind of disability.
Exactly,
Sure,
exactly. And we talked earlier, you talked earlier about, it's not necessarily a disability, right? There were certain people that are short, that can't see, or that have trouble and they have to kind of stand back a little bit. We were in Chicago show, we had just the exact opposite in one of the things, because we had a former Chicago Bulls basketball player there. Well, this dude's 7 foot tall. When he goes to reach for the thing, he's always been over, way over, to reach the game, and it makes it difficult on his back to play.
Yeah.
Now he can stand up straight and hold it in his hand, and he loved it. He thought it was great.
Yeah, it can get a little awkward for me, so that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah. So it really does. It's not necessarily for the physically challenged. It's for the physically different.
Plus, the younger generation picks this up and they use it like a game controller.
Yeah.
And they do both buttons, one with each thumb, and play it like a
And it's
game
more natural
controller.
to them.
And it's more natural.
Yeah, they use it like this.
An 8-year-old kid at the show,
They're
he
cooking.
was hanging over the plunger, and he just picked it up off the plunger and picked it up like a game controller, and started playing Ghostbusters, and I think he scored almost 400 million points.
Yeah, he's
And I asked him, I said, well, how do you like that? He says, well, I like this better than the buttons. It's more like a video game.
Yeah.
So, it has desired features for any individual that wants to use it, however they want to use it.
Yeah, so I guess to a point, that's just another option.
That's
Yep.
right, yeah. It's another option, yeah.
And Jim was stating earlier about the controllers. Our controllers look pretty weird, look pretty odd. The small kids are pretty square. But one of the things that we're looking at is that we're trying to find and locate another company that is a 3D, that could 3D print for us. So that if somebody comes up and, as he said, has a so these
A
deformity or a
something.
difficulty. So these controllers would be ones that we sell to the arcades like mine, where you have the standard controllers, standard things. People come in and they just use them, right? Because they've never seen it before. Well, once somebody uses it, just goes, wow, I like this. We can make a custom controller just for them. So then we get to figure out, how do you want to do it? Do you want to have it in your hand? Or maybe you want like a joystick with a trigger button and a missile button, right? And maybe you want a trigger finger and a thumb to do it. And if that's the case, well, let us 3D print you one that fits your hand and put that connector on it, and away you go. Part of our patent and part of our requirements are the layout of the wiring of the jacks, so that what is the right button on this one will always be the right button on every pinball you put in there, right? Because if this controller, if this black button is the right button on one machine, but you go to the next machine and the buttons are reversed, then that person that's used to holding them things like this, well, now they got to flip it over. They got to do something different,
Yeah,
because
lose the muscle
it's not
memory.
going to mess them up, right? So it was also about making sure that the jacks and the controllers are all wired correctly, so that the same configuration on every machine across the board they go and play. Whether it's one here or whether it's Chicago or California or across the world, doesn't matter. As long as they match our things, you're connected and running, and they can play on any machine they come across.
And you said that That was at the Chicago event that you went to. What was the general feedback you were getting?
Really good. So while we were at Chicago Pinball Machine, we were also working with a group called Project Pinball. Project Pinball is a great group out of Florida. What they do is they gather money and donations and whatever, and they buy pinball machines and maintenance agreements and put them in children's hospitals. We've actually done that, worked with them once, and we've had 2 pinball machines installed. One's at the Children's Memorial here in the Woodlands, and one is the Herman Memorial Children's Hospital downtown. So we have 2 machines there. Well, they have the group, there were several of us that have come up with similar ideas. So Inclusive Game Works and Pinball Guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, Pinball Guys came up with the floor set, right? So they had a whole setup showing everybody here all these different ways to do that. And we all had really good feedback from it. People are very happy to see that. They're excited about seeing it. And it's the first time they've had, as they stopped counting first, the first time somebody's ever played a pinball because they couldn't. Now they can, and it just makes them happy. It's great.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I know in your other video you had mentioned besides just the hand, people might be able to use it with their feet, or that's something that you've been considering?
The blow and suck device, anything that has 2 switches. So you could, like the blow and suck device, you could blow and flip one flipper and suck and flip the other.
We just figured they might hyperventilate trying to play the game.
Yeah, but they would be able to do it with no arm control or leg control.
Yeah.
So we think we can adapt this to different devices that people use because of their handicap.
And we have prototype switches right now in the back for feet control.
Okay.
So we've already seen it, we've already tested. You can play pinball with your feet now.
Yeah.
I was hearing about that. That sounded very,
Yep,
very
we can do that as
interesting.
well.
Yep.
And that's the idea, is that if we make it simplistic enough and make it things, the challenge is making sure we have the right type of equipment and wiring and stuff to handle the voltages. Because remember, we're going with new machines which use very small voltage to the really old machines that are using high voltages, not high voltages, but a certain voltages and amps running through it. So those are all things we had to consider. But as of right now, we're hoping that we can reach as many people as we can, and that's the idea. The machines kits that we said, $15 per machine, takes you less than 10 minutes. These controllers in this configuration, $20. So for an arcade that has 10 machines, that's $150 plus 2 controllers, a big and a smaller, that's $40. So less than $200, they can have 10 machines then available for people with disabilities to play. So it's affordable and it's easy to install, and that was our goal.
And I want to know, if someone was a guest at the game Preserve, how would you handle that? They said, I heard about your controller. How can I try it at your location?
So we give the controllers, so we keep the controllers up front. When people come in, if we notice to begin with that they have some sort of physical disability or challenge, we will, hey, we've got just the thing for you. We're also in the process of developing what we would call a media kit. So if an arcade or somebody purchases some of our kits, we would give them a media kit, which would include a short little graphic to go on their webpage saying that they're now physically challenged, adaptable, right? They have that ability. We would also have a poster that they could print at their local Walgreens that would print big poster size that says, hey, do you have these challenges? We have these controllers available for you. The reason I'm stumbling over exactly how we work that, because we haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
We haven't figured that out, but that's the idea.
But like our guys at the front, they know about these.
Yeah.
And like last night, we had a gentleman come in with his wife, and I think he had 3 kids, and his arm was broke. His left arm.
It could be a temporary thing.
So we gave him a controller, and he could play while he was here with his kids and his wife.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who break their arm, shoulder surgery, whatever. They have one arm that's down for a period of time that still gives them the ability to play. So.
Yeah, definitely it's catching people's interest, because before you reached out to my brother, a few people had asked us, oh, when are you asking them about the adapter? And I didn't know what they were talking about. So.
Well, good. I'm glad the news, like I said, the news is getting out there. We haven't really hit it. And the reason we didn't is there was a couple of things we wanted to do. One was we wanted to make sure we had a provisional patent set out there. And the whole reason we're doing that, we're out for the patent. It's not because we're going to jack the prices up and make a lot of money on things, and that's not our goal. Well, our patent is to keep somebody else from doing that, because somebody else could take it, patent it, and then we would be stuck, and then they would charge a bunch. And so it's more of a protection of the physically challenged than it is for us to try to make a bunch of money off. And the patent's probably going to take all our profit money anyway, but because they're not cheap. But the idea there is, so we wanted to make sure we had a provisional patent. We also wanted to go to the Chicago show and see exactly what the industry thought about it. And we got very, very good response. We have several people. We have a large pinball distributor that has already talked to us about distributing it for us. One of the things we're going to do, working with Project Pinball, is because they really want these things installed in the hospitals, because where else do you have people with messed up arms and things is in a hospital, right? So what we're going to do is on our website, if people want to, they can buy a machine kit and a controller bundled together and send it to, they designated it for the Project Pinball. So when they do that, that set would then go to Project Pinball for them to install in one of the things and let people play for it, let the kids pay for it.
Yeah, pretty much a donation, right?
Yep, as a donation, you can do that and it'll go to Project Pinball.
That's really nice.
And we have some good stories already with this. Is like Rusty was saying, the first game we modified was Gorgar. So we had it and the controller, and they took it to Dallas, and there was a gentleman that was up there that bought the Gorgar and the controller.
He bought the controller.
All game because his brother lost his arm in a motorcycle accident, and they used to play pinball together, and they couldn't anymore. So he bought the thing, and now they can play pinball together.
Yep. And I got an email 3 or 4 days later saying he brought it home, plugged it into his house, didn't tell his brother till his brother came over. Hey, look at my new pinball. Oh, that's really great. Then he plugged it in and said, here, you want to play with me? And it was just fantastic.
Wow, that's really nice.
Yeah, it really is. It's a great thing. It's a great story for us. It's a great, that's our goal. That is our goal. It's not, we're not here to get rich. We're not here. We just we want people to be able to play and enjoy the joy of pinball.
And earlier when we were speaking, you said that for you, it felt a little surreal because you were saying if you didn't have your situation, you might not have made this.
Well,
you want to elaborate
yeah, I mean, this is a direct result of me having a stroke, because otherwise, why would I have ever thought about this? So it's kind of the necessity was the mother of invention for the device. So, I mean, I guess there's a side benefit to me having a stroke,
And did you say during that time you weren't able to play games, right? You
were
fixing them.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are a lot of guys like me, pinball players, who've had strokes, and that was the end of their playing pinball, because you can't play pinball with one hand. So now that we have this, those guys who were maybe 10 or 20 or 30-year pinball players who had suffered what I did can now play again. So I think that's a beautiful thing.
There were two other companies that we mentioned earlier that were at the Chicago show. Both of those guys did it because someone in their group was either handicapped and they wanted to include them, or they had something happen to them that prevented them from being able to play again, and they wanted them to be able to come back and play. So and it's funny because as we did it, oh yeah, so and so did that so many years ago because their friend couldn't do this and whatever, and it's like, why don't you turn it over to the world? That's I think is the difference between us and the other two, and along with these other two folks, is that not only do we see the need locally and with our own friends, but we see the need everywhere, and we want it to go everywhere.
And just for reference, when did you have your situation? What year was it? And
I had my stroke in September of 2020.
Oh, okay.
So it's been over 2 years.
And when did you get to play pinball again? Like, how long was that gap?
I don't know. When did
February of this year.
February of this year.
And then,
it took me to come up with the idea.
So, Jim, when he had his stroke, I
was here.
He was here, and then his first minor stroke, they got him to the hospital. He had his major stroke there. He was on a vent for several weeks, and then recovered through that, and it's been a long road for him. It really has. I am amazed at what this man has gone through and where he's at now.
Yeah,
It's
I
quite
mean,
amazing.
I can walk around now with the cane.
Yeah. We just went to
It's
Chicago and
been,
back. In an RV, it was great.
It's been over 2.5 years.
Yeah. So it took him a
me
year
that
to come back
long-
to work.
It took me that long to get back to where I had some mobility to get around, you know.
Yeah, because stroke took a lot out
I
of him. We're
spent
very lucky to have him.
Probably a year in a wheelchair only. So it was just a gradual thing, you know, getting a little bit better and a little bit better. So
It's funny, the first time he comes walking in, he's got his walker, and everybody's like, yeah, look at Jim back, he's walking. Yeah. We're really happy to see him come back, not only in the chair, but also as he makes progress and as he comes back.
Yeah, so it's been, a real transition. I mean, the main thing about a stroke is when you have one, it makes everything that you do seem like slow motion, except for falling down. That you do full speed. And I got 11 stitches right here to prove it. So, but you learn to be careful. You have to be careful with what you're doing. But it's okay.
And how did it feel once you finally got to play pinball again? What
Well,
was that like?
it was awesome because I had a tool that I could test the machine out and see if the flippers were working right and all the stuff on the playfield was working right and all that kind of thing. I could actually fix the pinball machine and say, yeah, it's good to go.
And see, that's a bit different with Jim. Jim never was a pinball player.
Yeah, I was never really a pinballer.
He just
I
worked
just
on them
repaired
for him,
them.
right? He
I
just
fixed
repaired
them.
them and then tested them. And so now it was like you said, it's a tool
So
for him to go back
it
and
took
test.
that away from me. I couldn't test them. So this gave me that ability back. So we just, since it does what it does, we thought, well, there's probably a larger community out here that needs it to be able to just play. So we decided to put it out there.
Okay.
Thanks for checking out the Adaptive Flipper Controller interview, and thanks to the Game Preserve staff for the invitation. Stay tuned, as in the near future we'll have a product demonstration, and stick around for ways to support the channel and related videos.